Hey everybody, this is Dr. Daulton from Hammond Chiropractic. I wanted to make a short video for you today because one of my patients this morning asked me a question that I thought was really interesting. Now, let me just tell you first that this patient of mine, he's what we call a wellness patient, which means that he doesn't come into my office because he's in pain. He comes into my office because he utilizes chiropractic care in order to make sure that there's no pressure on his nervous system so that his nervous system can function at its best, which means that, of course, because the nervous system is controlling everything else in the body, his entire body is going to function better. So he uses it as a way just to stay healthier as a person, as an active human being. And a lot of our patients do that. You know, we don't mind taking care of people who are in pain, obviously, but really the biggest benefit of chiropractic is for those people who come in and utilize it as a way just to stay well and to stay healthier. And what he asked me this morning was really interesting. He said, is it possible that me coming in for these regular adjustments can make my immune system stronger? Because I was thinking about it and I realized that I haven't been sick in quite a long time, and I used to get sick all the time with colds and things like that, but since I've been coming in to see you, I haven't been having that happen to me at all. And I thought that's really interesting because we do see that in chiropractic quite a bit. In fact, a lot of times when we are adjusting patients and taking care of people in the way that chiropractors do, we see a lot of different things happen that aren't related to back pain at all. So for example, people will tell us all the time that they have more energy when they're getting adjusted. They're sleeping better when they're getting adjusted. They'll tell me that their digestion is better. I have a lot of patients who come in, they get heartburn, and they know when it's time for them to get a chiropractic adjustment because the heartburn comes back, and as soon as we adjust them, the heartburn goes away. So all these different health benefits start to happen for people, and after a while, when you've been doing this for so long, you start to take it for granted, and you just kind of expect that that's just what's going to happen. So when he asked about it, I thought, you know, a lot of people probably don't know about this information, so I wanted to share this with you in a video today. And what I've actually done was I went and I did some research because I wanted to find out what the studies have actually said about this, because we know it's a real thing in practice that we see happen all the time for people. But what does the research actually say? And so I'm going to get my notes here. You know, normally I just talk off the top of my head for you guys, but this information, there's a lot of detail here, so I wanted to make sure I had some notes so I don't forget something to tell you. But let's first talk about what the immune system even is. What is that part of your body that fights off infections and bacteria and all these foreign invaders that come into our system? And actually, it's a series of organs that create white blood cells, and those white blood cells are designed to fight off all these different invaders into your body. Now, the two biggest organs that are a part of this system are the thymus gland, which is a little gland that sits inside of your chest area, and then bone marrow, believe it or not. Those are the two big things that are responsible for producing white blood cells. Now, there's some other organs associated with the immune system as well. So I've got my list here. We've got the lymph nodes and the lymph vessels, which the lymph nodes are all over the place, okay? They tend to concentrate here in the neck area and also into the shoulder and the upper chest area, but they go all throughout the body, and they're connected to a series of vessels, which are kind of like blood vessels, but we call them lymph vessels, and their job is actually to clean out the blood as it's passing through there. So it's a very, very important part of your immune system. We also have the tonsils and the adenoids, which most people think about that. And this is interesting. You'll notice that over the years, things have kind of changed in healthcare. It used to be that doctors didn't think anything about removing the tonsils and adenoids, but really, they say that most infectious agents enter the body through the mouth. And that's why the tonsils and adenoids are so important, because they're actually one of the first lines of defense in order to send white blood cells against that infection and try to kill it off before it even gets into your body. So they're actually very important. The spleen is another organ that's a part of your immune system. And then also the appendix, which is also another interesting story, because it used to be that they would remove the appendix routinely, thinking it didn't have a purpose. But when you look at the appendix, it actually is full of cells that create white blood cells. And so, of course, the purpose of it is that if anything gets into your colon that isn't supposed to be there, the appendix will create the white blood cells that can go and kill off whatever that is that isn't supposed to be inside of your colon, so it doesn't spread and turn into an infection in your body somewhere else. All right? So that's what your immune system is. But the question is, what controls the immune system? How is it that it works? Does it just do its thing and that's it? Well, no, the answer is the immune system is controlled by the nervous system. And actually, when you look at the research, there's a lot of talk about how the nervous system and the immune system are basically like one system within the body. They work hand in hand together. Not only do you have nerves that are going to these different organs and body parts that are creating the white blood cells that we need in order to fight off different infections and different health problems, but also the nervous system releases hormones. And there was a study done. It's written in a journal called Circulation. This was done in 1992 by doctors Murray, Irwin, and Reardon. And what they were studying was they were looking at how the nervous system affects the immune system. And not only do we have nerves that are directly going to these organs, but also there's a part of your nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system, which we're going to talk a lot about in a second because this is really, really important and significant for the discussion today. But your sympathetic nervous system actually releases a hormone called norepinephrine. Now, you've probably heard about this before. But the whole purpose of the sympathetic nervous system is that it causes the fight or flight response within your body, which is a protective mechanism of the body. But when it releases this hormone norepinephrine, which is a part of that process, that actually shuts your immune system down. It stops these immune organs from producing the white blood cells that it's supposed to. And that was actually discovered in another study. They were, it's in a journal called Immunological Reviews. This was in December of 1987. Dr. Felton, who had done this research, what they were looking at was, how it is that people get sick more when they're under stress. Have you ever noticed that? That when you're under a lot of stress, you tend to get more colds and get the flu and all kinds of things that normally you probably wouldn't have gotten. But it always seems to hit people right when they're under quite a bit of stress. And they said, well, why is this? And the reason, what they discovered was that the reason for that is what I was just talking about. It's because of the interaction of the sympathetic nervous system with the immune system. And when your body is in fight or flight mode or in stress mode, it's releasing that hormone norepinephrine, and what that's doing is it's stopping your immune system from working the way it's supposed to, and so you are more likely to get sick at that point in time or to have an infection take over in your system. So let's talk about that fight or flight response, because that's going to bring us back to this discussion of how chiropractic has an effect on this. The fight or flight response is there, like I said, to protect you, and this was actually something that was developed in the body probably way back when people had to go hunt their food down, all right, and things like that. And if you think about it, back in those days, let's say I was a hunter and I was going out after my next meal, and let's say I encountered a bear, all right, or something that wanted to eat me instead. So if I encounter that bear, what's going to happen inside of my body? Well, it's going to prepare me to either fight the bear or to run away from the bear as fast as I possibly can. And that's what we call it the fight or flight response, because it's preparing you for one of the two options. So let's talk about what happens there. So this part of your nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, basically starts to make changes inside of your system to prepare you for this. So for example, it's going to increase my heart rate so I can get a lot more blood pumping through my body out to the muscles, so that way I'm prepared to either fight or flee from this bear. It's going to start to make me breathe a lot more deeply because I need more oxygen within my system for this to happen. All right, it's going to make me more alert. So different things are going to change within my body. My blood pressure is going to go up. All of these things happen in order to prepare me to fight or run away from the bear. Now, at the same time, there's a lot of things that are shut down within the body because they're not a priority. So, for example, the immune system is going to be shut down because there's no point in fighting off anything that could be happening inside of my body if I don't survive this bear. All right, does that make sense to you? Digestion is going to be shut down because who needs to digest food? If I don't live another day, well, then what was the point of that anyways? So the body will shut that down. So all of these different things that aren't considered immediately necessary will be turned off within the body by the sympathetic nervous system in order to make sure that you have the best chance of surviving the bear, whether you choose to fight it or run away from it, okay? Now, here's what happens, though. In today's world that we live in, stress is completely different. We're no longer, most of us are no longer under the threat of ever facing a bear. We're not going to face some huge animal that's probably going to eat us, right? But we do experience stress through our work lives, through our family lives. Different things that happen to us throughout the day can cause stress, whether we're driving in traffic, and there are some crazy drivers out there, I'm just saying. All right, so all these things are stresses, and your body doesn't really know the difference between a bear or a work stress or some other type of stress. And so the body reacts exactly the same way to any stress that we have, whether or not it's life-threatening for us or not, actually. All right? Now, in today's world, what happens is we don't have just one stress here and there like it would have been back then. What we have is we have stress after stress after stress after stress. And so what can happen is that the sympathetic nervous system can actually get stuck in that mode, and it will keep the process going all the time so that your body is constantly stuck on stress mode. I mean, it's really interesting how you can have a patient who has high blood pressure, and, you know, how do we treat that? Well, we treat that by giving the person some type of medication, right, that's going to lower the blood pressure. When really what's happened is that their body is thinking that it's under stress at this moment in time. And so in that environment, if there really was a bear in the room, it would actually be a healthy reaction for the blood pressure to be high, correct? Okay? But in our world, your body gets stuck there, and now we develop all these health problems as the end result of the body being stuck on stress. All right? Now, what's also interesting then is that all the way back in 1974, before any of this research was done that showed that the nervous system has a direct connection to the immune system, and that it's because of the hormonal connection there that happens. But back in 1974, back in the Journal of the American Osteopathy Association, a Dr. Core had discovered at that time that what we call subluxations, all right, they call them spinal lesions, but it's the same thing. Chiropractors call it a subluxation, osteopaths call it a spinal lesion. But what they found is that when a person has a subluxation, that this actually puts stress directly on the nervous system, and it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, so it creates the exact same effect as if you were in fight or flight mode, just like what we were just talking about, okay? Now, what exactly is a subluxation? I understand, you know, most of you probably have seen most of my videos, but if you haven't, let me just briefly tell you exactly what that is so that we're on the same page here. If we look at the spine, all right, so obviously I got my spine right here. I'm just going to take a closer look at just two vertebrae in the spine. So you can see if they were in here, I'll just pull it out here and we'll take a closer look. And we're going to look at it from the side view here. But notice with me how this is put together. You've got two bones on top of each other. Between the two bones is a disc, which is basically like a cushion that separates the two bones. And then at the back here, in this area, you'll see that the bones come together and they form these openings off to the side, and that's where the nerves are coming out. I've got this huge model here that I just bought, which I'm all excited about, by the way. I'm going to use this in one of my videos soon. But you can see this a little bit more closely here, where, you know, you've got the bones here, you've got the disc, and then you can see where the nerves are coming out of that opening there between the bones. And inside here, this is your spinal cord. So this is coming down off of your brain, and it lives inside of your spine, basically, okay? Now, what can happen in the case of a subluxation is that these vertebrae can actually misalign. So if you watch the bones here, do you see how that bone is moving back? And notice with me what happens. When it shifts backward, what it's going to do is it's going to close down on that opening where the nerve is coming out of. It puts pressure on that nerve, and then whatever that nerve is going to stop functioning, because it's going to stop the energy that runs through these nerves, which is what allows your body to function properly. So what a chiropractor does is we find where these subluxations exist. We do something called a chiropractic adjustment, which is to gradually realign these vertebrae. Therefore, we're opening up that opening again, taking the pressure off the nerve, and then the nerve heals and it starts to work like it's supposed to, and then whatever the nerve is going to or controlling starts to be a much healthier organ or body part, and the body functions a lot better because there's no pressure on those nerves, all right? So that's what a subluxation is. And what this Dr. Core was saying was that when you have that misalignment or that subluxation in your spine anywhere, it's going to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, and now your body is stuck in that fight or flight mode, and it releases that norepinephrine, and that shuts down your immune system. So having a subluxation, which I just showed you, and that's what we're looking for as chiropractors, will cause your immune system to not function as well, and you're going to get sick more frequently, basically. So when we correct that, we take the pressure off the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system goes back to normal and functions like it's supposed to, and your immune system therefore is not being affected by that norepinephrine, and the immune system gets a boost, and now you have a healthier person, basically. All right, so it does make a huge difference when a person is seeing a chiropractor as far as how healthy you are overall. Now, this is some interesting research that I found that I thought you might want to hear about that's related to this topic. I just find this so fascinating. But in the Chiropractic Journal, this was done in August 1989. There was a doctor, he's a PhD, his name is Ronald Pirro, and he was the chief of cancer prevention research at New York's Preventive Medicine Institute and professor of medicine at New York University. So this is not a chiropractor, this is actually a medical, doctor type of a guy. Well, he's a PhD, but he, teaches in a medical school. And so what he had done was he actually took a group of people, it was 107 patients, and these were all people who had been going to a chiropractor for wellness care for 5 years at least, at minimum, okay? So they'd been going to the chiropractor just like I was telling you about earlier that my one patient who was asking the question about this was, and they had gone for at least 5 years. Now, they studied this group of people for a 3-year time period, and what they found was that they took this group and they saw how strong their immune systems were, and they compared them to a group of people who appeared to be perfectly healthy, all right, from the outside. They weren't in any pain, didn't have any sickness, that sort of thing, but they had never received chiropractic care. And then they compared that group to another group of patients who had had a serious life-threatening disease such as cancer, HIV, something of that nature, all right? And here's what they found. When you compared the group that had been seeing the chiropractor for 5 years or more and to the group that had not seen the chiropractor but appeared perfectly healthy on the surface, the chiropractic group actually had a 200% stronger immune system than the patients who had never seen the chiropractor before. And then compared to the group that had a serious life-threatening disease such as cancer, they found that the chiropractic group had a 400% stronger immune system than those people who had a life-threatening disease. And what was interesting even more so than that is because, we tend to have this idea that as we get older, the body just kind of declines, right? Well, what they found was that it didn't matter how old the person was. If they had been going through chiropractic care, the immune system comparison that we just talked about, the 200% and the 400%, was still valid no matter how old that person was. So it doesn't matter how old you are. Another study then, so that was with a group of people who had been seeing chiropractic care as wellness patients. What about if you just went to the chiropractor and just got an adjustment and you never had gone back again? Well, another study done by Patricia Brennan, who was also a PhD, and this was published in JMPT in 1991, what she had found is that when a person receives a chiropractic adjustment, there's immediately an increase or a boost in the immune cells or the white blood cells that go out into the bloodstream and fight off all these infections. So if you're sick, and we tell patients this sometimes too, if you get a cold or a flu or whatever the case may be, come in and get adjusted right away, because if we can adjust you, you're going to get a boost of immune cells released into your system, and it's going to help you heal a lot faster, and you're going to get better or get over that infection a lot more quickly than if you didn't get adjusted. Now finally, and this is such an interesting story, there was another study published in the Chiro Research Journal. This was in 1994. This was done by Dr. Solano and a team. This was actually done at Life University, which is one of the chiropractic schools. What they did was they took a group of HIV positive patients, and they took a group of them and they had them get adjusted by a chiropractor for a period of 6 months, and then they compared them to a group of HIV positive patients who had not seen the chiropractor for that 6-month time period. And here's what was so interesting. Here's what they found. At the end of the 6 months, they had the people go back to their medical doctor and have blood work done to see what their CD4 cells had done in that time period. And the patients who had gone to the chiropractor for the 6 months period of time, they had a 40% increase in their CD4 cells compared to when they before they started the chiropractic care. The group that did not see the chiropractor at all, they didn't do anything but the normal medications and whatnot that you do to treat HIV, they actually had a 7.96% decrease in CD4 cells over that 6-month time period. And the only difference in the two groups was that one group was seeing the chiropractor and getting adjusted regularly for that 6 months. The other group was not being adjusted. So this is fascinating. So the whole point of this story, the whole point of me sharing this research with you that I had found is that, yes, when you see the chiropractor, you're going to notice an improvement in your immune health, and you're also going to see that you're not going to get sick as often. But what does that mean overall? Well, this is another interesting story. Another study was done this was in the Journal of Manipulative and Physiological Therapeutics in 1997. And what they had done was they had compared a group of patients who had been seeing the chiropractor compared to a group of people who did not see the chiropractor, and what they were looking at was healthcare costs. Okay, so they said, does this group have less healthcare costs because they're seeing the chiropractor? And what they found was that the answer is yes. That because they were seeing the chiropractor, they didn't have to go into the hospital as much. They didn't have to have as many expensive tests like MRIs and CAT scans and blood work and all this other stuff that you get done regularly. Now, I just want to make sure that I'm clear here, though. That doesn't go to say that I believe that you should never see your medical doctor. I think it's important that people at least once a year go in for a physical. It's important to know where you stand each year, because the body, when it changes fast, and you never ever want to let it get out of control. So there's certain things, of course, that you want to have done on a regular basis in order to just make sure that you prevent anything from developing. But when you look at patients who receive chiropractic care, the whole point of this is that their healthcare costs are much lower because they don't get sick as often. They don't have as many health problems as people do when they're not going in to see the chiropractor on a regular basis. All right. Well, that's pretty much all I have to share with you guys. I hope you found that interesting. I loved looking this information up and answering that question. And like I said, you know, if you get sick, make sure you see the chiropractor. But even if you're not sick, if you're feeling really good, you want to make sure that you maintain your health, and you want to utilize chiropractic care to keep you as healthy as you possibly can be. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on the next video.